Okay, in this video, we're going to look at some throwing exceptions. And here I have a class called exception example. Here's my main. This is in C#. Don't worry about the actual programming. Just kind of want to give you a flavor or feel for how the whole thing goes. What this actually does is takes exam scores and averages them out. So I have exam scores, and it's an array of integers. And I just have a total score, which I set to 0 initially. If you see the double lines here, that means it's a comment for right now. There's some things I'll do in a later video that will use these commented out things. If it's commented out, it means it's not being used right now. Count of scores, how many scores am I putting in? And here's my average for the test score. And this is just a temporary in value, just hold some things when I read it in. So here's my try. It starts up here and it goes all the way down to here. So all this is in try. And again, if it's green, it means I'm not using it right now, so ignore it. So here's my try. And here's my catch. I'm using exception. Exception is just a general catch for any type of exception that occurs. So exception is my class I'm using. EX is my object. And so what I want to do is when I get this exception, I'm going to write problem with scores, cannot compute average, and then I'll put the message that's up there. So I will get the message and write it out. I also have a finally here. So here's the catch. It starts here and here, and I have a finally. Remember, finally always runs. Whether you have an exception or not, finally always runs. And what this will do is put out 3 dots, a new line, 3 dots, new line, 3 dots, and it'll say terminate normally. And then the program ends. And again, here's my finally. So I don't have to put a throw in this because the program automatically does it. If I have a problem, it'll automatically throw an exception. I don't have to write anything with that. It's just in my try block. And let's see if I can run it without any problems. So let's put in 3 scores. Score 1 is, we'll say score 1 is 88. Score 2 is 99. And score 3 is 85. Boom. Average is 90. Is that right? It looks about right. And here's my 3 dots terminating normally. So everything went well. I went through the code fine. Everything terminated normally. Everything is good. And again, let's just look at the code. So I write out how many scores do we enter, and I'll read that in, and I'll put it in a temporary in value. I will then take the in value and parse it to a integer, which means I take the string, everything read in as a string, change it to an integer, and put it in the count of scores. Then exam scores, and I will set, okay, count of scores, whatever it is. Say this last time was 3. I said, okay, I'll have 3 exam scores. Count of scores will be 3. Exam scores will be 3. So this array will have 3 elements. So index starts at 0. Index us in count of scores, which is 3, which I read in from here. And then I do index plus plus. It's just increment by 1. So I enter the score. So enter score, and this will say 1. Read it in, put it in value again, parse it to an integer, put it into, so the first time through index is 0. So this would be exam score 0 array. Whatever I read in, that's where I'll go at exam score 0. Then I add it to the total score. Originally total score should be 0. Yeah, I set it to 0 up here. So total score is 0, and I'm going to add exam score to it. So I go back up again. Index is now 1. Read it in. Change it to a integer. Then exam score 1. I parse it, whatever I have. I store it in exam score 1. And I add it to total score. Do it again. Right here. Okay, now index is 2. Enter score, and it'll say 3 here because we humans start 1, 2, 3. But it's 2. I read it in as a string, change it to an integer, put it into exam score 2, add it to total score. Well, now I'm at 3 and 3 is not less than the count of scores because that's 3. I jump over this. I then do the average, which is total score divided by count of scores. So it's my total score divided by 3, and that gives me my average. And I'll say the average is, and whatever the average was, I think it was 99 or no 90. This is what got written out. And then I jump down to the finally, right line, dot, 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 terminate normally, and it ended. So here's my finally. Now, let's look at it and try to catch something. Let's do something wrong. Okay, so first thing, instead of putting in a number, let me put in a string or a character. So let's start this up. So how many you want to enter? I'll just hit R. Boom. Problem with scores. Cannot compute average. Input string was not in the correct format. Boom. 3 of the lines and terminate normally. Well, what that came from is down here. Right line. Problem with scores. Cannot compute average. And then you got the message. Let's see what that message was again. R. Boom. Input string was not in the correct format was the message. So that's what got hit. Input string was not of the correct format. Let's do another one. This time I'm going to put 0. So I'm going to be dividing by 0. Boom. Problem with scores cannot compute average. Attempt to divide by 0. There's my 3 dots. Terminate normally for my finally. Okay. So I got those two. This is a general kind of exception catch. Let me put the other exception catches in here. So let me just, let's see, we'll move this one. Let's see. And we'll get rid of this. So now I put the other ones in. I've got some more exception catches here. This is a multiple exception catch. One is I got alpha character instead of a number. We've already tried this, but it should hit here and not down here. So it shouldn't say problem with scores. Divide by 0, we did that one. Problem with scores cannot compute average. It's the same thing here, but I'm going to get a message, and we're going to do a stack trace. Same thing here, we're going to do a stack trace. Here's an index out of range. For example, I have 3 things, and I somehow wrote the code wrong, and so I have the index out of range. We'll check that one too, and that'll give me a message. So here's my exception, format exception. That's the class. Again, I make it EX as the object, so I'll do X message and X stack trace. Let's see where it came from. Divide by 0 is my class. EX is my object. Again, I'll put out problems with scores, put out the message as part of one of the attributes of this class, and also do a stack trace. Index out of range, again, EX, and I'll just put out the message. And here's my more general one. When I do multiple, I want to have the more general ones at the bottom. This would catch everything. If I had this at the top, we would never hit any of these 3 because this would catch everything. So the more general ones go at the bottom. And again, my finally would run. So let's run it this time. Start. First thing I want to do is hit a 0. So we'll do the 0 one. Problem with scores cannot compute average. Attempt to divide by 0. And here is my, where it happened at, line 43. So if I look at line 43, boom, right here, count of scores. Count of scores was 0, so it says, okay, you did it wrong. Attempt to divide by 0 was an exception, example, main, and it's on my L drive. It tells me everywhere where it's at, but it was line 43. So, and just to prove to you, let's get out of here, that I hit the right one. Let's see. Here's divide by 0. Let's just put a breakpoint there and you can see I can hit it. Okay, so start 0. Boom, I hit it. Problem with scores cannot compute averages. So there's the message, there's the stack trace, and that gives me everything. And that's the exception example. Okay. Now, let's get rid of the breakpoint. Next thing I want to do is Well, we did the other one was where is it? Typing in an alpha character instead of a number. I should hit here. Let's put the breakpoint right there. Toggle breakpoint, and we'll start. And I hit an R. Boom. Okay. When typing in a character instead of a number, here I hit it right here. So that's my exception. It caught it. So I can just continue. And if you look, here it is. We enter R. Input string was not in the correct format. And here's everything. It was line 25. If I look at line 25, yeah, I tried to parse what was a string into an integer, and I couldn't do it. So that was my line 25 error. The final one I'll show you is just index out of bounds. Toggle breakpoint. Take them off. Okay, so index out of bounds. To do that, instead of being less than, I'll say less than or equal to, which is incorrect because what this will do, this count is 3. It'll give me 0, 1, 2, 3, which is actually 4 elements instead of 3. So let's start that. How many scores will we enter? I'll say 3. Score 1 is 88. Score 2 is 99. Score 3 is 85. Oh, score 4, I screwed up, but we knew that. Index was outside the bounds of the array terminated normally. So that's just kind of an example of the try. The try started here and ended here. Everything in here was a try. And I showed you 3 times of errors, divide by 0, wrong format, array out of bounds, and I had different catches for them. These are the more, this is the more general one down here, and these are more specific to what I'm looking for. And I did a stack trace, and I put out the message, things like that. Now in the next video, I'm going to show you how to write your own exception. So thanks for watching. Bye.